Hey everybody, how's it going? It's been a little while since I last made a video, and that's for a few reasons. I've started training again properly, which means that I'm actually not spending as much time on my bike. Instead, I'm doing some running, some core exercises, having a little bit of downtime in between the sessions, and then doing shorter, more intense rides. The next reason is the weather. It's been, whilst it's alright now, it's not been great recently. It's rained a lot, which kind of affects my preferred method of filming off the front of the bike with that 360 camera looking back at me. Covers each of the lenses in water, and of course, can't really see through water, can you, on a camera lens? Anyway, I decided today was a good time to make a new video because I'm going to be upgrading my road bike and my mountain bike. There's a few reasons for these upgrades. One of them is so that all of the bikes have the same crank length. So I run 170s on the e-bike, 170s on this bike already, but the mountain bike currently has 175s. I've always preferred shorter cranks. I was a huge fan of using Rotor products way back in 2011, 12, 13 and 14. To this day, I still genuinely believe they were the years that I felt the best on a bike. And I put that down to the Q-rings, so I'm quite interested to see if that's going to be something I experience again. So whether or not I could actually quantify that my performance is better with shorter cranks and with Q-rings, probably not, but cycling is one of those interesting sports that kind of blurs the line between feeling and actual quantifiable performance. If you feel good on the bike, you can almost guarantee that you're going to go better. So today, I'll be swapping out the cranks on both of these two bikes, sticking the cranks with the Q-rings on, which also comes with the Rotor INSPIDER. And I quite like that design because, as far as I'm aware, it's currently the only power meter that can go on a road bike or on a mountain bike. It's the same actual spider, which is and power measuring device for both bikes, which means that production costs and wastage is going to be much reduced. This might be a little bit embarrassing because my bike's not actually that clean. Like, superficially it looks okay. First off, remove the pedals whilst you're on the bike, just because that's going to make it a little bit easier. Got something to push against. And then when that's done, we can whip the cranks out, put the bottom bracket adapter on if we need it, although we might not, maybe a couple of spaces, and we're done. Pedal number one, pedal number two, so tight. Give that a little scrub. All of these items, it's kind of like Meccano for adults. I had to put them all together, so the axle comes separately, meaning you can use the mountain bike axle or the road axle. The crank arms come separately, and the rings come separately from the Spider as well. And then the road version's got this little aero fairing over the top, which I think is quite cool. A few things to know: if you are going to put oval rings onto your bike, you're almost certainly going to have to lift your front mech just to cope with the ovality. The fact that at certain points the ring's going to be nearer to a 56, and at other points it'll be more like a 51. That's when in the big ring it's a 53/39, like I always use. It shouldn't really change the shifting too much. Like, they've been designed to shift well, and the fact that the rings are both ramped and shaped in the same position means there won't be any problems with that. That was often an argument that people used against Q-rings in the past. Right, the cranks are on. There's a little bit of play if you listen. But I've got an adjuster on this side of the crank arm. The beauty of the rotor rings is that you can fine tune the adjustment of where the gearing's large and where the gearing's small. I've got mine set on setting 3. You can have it from 1 through to 5, and you can also do it on 0.25, 0.5 and 0.75 adjustment as well. You can use their app, which I did, if you remember, I did a video with GCN last year, and I used their app in their offices, or in their factory, for want of a better phrase, and it came out from memory on setting 3. I should probably go watch that video again just to make sure, or maybe just download the app and go through a little bit of testing. There's also an adjustment period from going from round rings to Q rings, and that's around 4 to 6 weeks. Though in reality, after around 10 days, if you ride your bike a lot, you'll start to feel that you don't notice that the rings aren't round. You definitely feel a big difference, especially when you stand up actually. You have to ride it to experience it. You get a free 30-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like the rings, they'll give you the money back and you send the rings back. But on the whole, I don't know anyone that's tried them that didn't actually prefer them. So my first training session is tomorrow actually, and it's a 90-minute session with 6 sprints. I did that session last week on the round rings, and it'd be quite interesting to compare the power numbers between the two sessions, but also more importantly the feeling of them as well, because once again it's that blurred lines thing where you can quantify performance, but ultimately if you don't feel good on a bike, you're never going to go that well. So I'm genuinely quite curious to see what it's like, and I'm going to do the same in just a second on the cross-country bike as well. A nice big solid aero ring. It's going to be mega stiff, hopefully mega fast, and with a little bit of luck I'll have the same enjoyment out of it that I had years ago. I genuinely believe my quads burn less on the Q-rings. We'll find out how that goes over the next few weeks. One final thing is the cranks need 2.5 kilos of force. That was what it says in the book to wake them up. So I'm just going to go and pedal, pair it to my Garmin, and then it's all ready to be used tomorrow. And then of course, after riding it for a few minutes, the first thing to do will be to do the zero offset, otherwise known as the calibration. Calibration, zero offset, they are different things, but it's like pressing tear on your kitchen scales just to make sure that it reads zero before you start recording anything. Now onto the mountain bike, same thing again, but I'm not going to bore you by going through the whole process. Just whip the old cranks off, put the new one in, although this one does need a different bottom bracket as well. One of the reasons I'm mostly excited about putting this on the mountain bike is because these are 170s and they're 175s, which is what most mountain bikes seem to come with. I don't think that makes much sense. To go fast on a bike, you need to pedal. And if you're pedal striking rocks and roots and all sorts, or little gullies when you're out on a mountain bike, then you're not actually putting any effort in to go forward. So I think just saving that 5mm, whilst it's not a lot, it is probably the difference between a few pedal strikes out on the trails and going fast or not. Also, again, I do prefer the short cranks just for the feel of it anyway. Having a power meter on a mountain bike is quite a weird thing because a lot of the time it's almost irrelevant because the trail is dictating your sort of power output to you. But if you choose a more gravelly type of ride that you could quite easily do on a cross-country bike, then actually it does become quite useful, or for some short uphill intervals. And also for curiosity, it means that maybe you were doing things on the mountain bike which weren't particularly conducive to your aerobic training at that time of the year, so it will just help me tailor my training a little bit more and feed my nerdy curiosity that I have inside my head. Taking these off, like, it's unbelievable how light they are. In fact, I'm going to go weigh them in a second. This is a little bit heavier. That's partly because they are carbon crank arms. They do a carbon version of these as well, but mainly I would imagine because of the power meter in there. Power meters obviously do weigh a little bit more. There's strain gauges and a circuit board inside of there, and then it's got a lot of protective and a little bit of sealing around it, protective material that is. And obviously that ring is just, it's a spider and a ring in one. Weighs pretty much nothing. That's a 38, this is a 34. I've got a 38 as well, but in coming weeks I want to do a bit of a challenge, seeing what I can climb on this bike versus what I can climb on the e-bike, and I think it'd be quite beneficial to have a 34 rather than a 38. 280 grams obviously is a considerable amount, you could think, but at the same time it's a small sacrifice for a bit of good data. So here I am in the living room and I've completed my first ride. I did manage to film a tiny little bit whilst I was out, but unfortunately the weather was absolutely disgusting. I did the 6 sprints, although if I'm really honest, I did 5 of the 6 sprints. It was so wet and so cold that I had a bit of a headache, you know, when the cold wind is just hitting your forehead and it's icy cold and really uncomfortable. So I headed home a little bit earlier than planned. I did do 1304 watts for the 20 seconds, which is considerably higher than last week. Though, to be really honest, after one ride, you can't draw any conclusions from that. Should have mentioned before, the cranks that I'm using are both aluminium. On the road bike, they are the Rotor LDO crank. On the mountain bike, it is the Rotor Capic crank. They do a carbon version for the mountain bike. Over the next coming weeks, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be up to because of the weather again. I'm not training a huge amount out on the road and doing lots of other stuff. I'm going to be doing a few indoor sessions coming up just because the weather is so bad. I think, to be really honest, the novelty from riding in the rain has worn off a little bit. So I'll be indoors. And on that note, I think it'd be quite a nice idea at some point over the Christmas period to do a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, drop them down below. I'm sure many people won't have made it this far through the video, but for those of you that have, please drop your questions down below and I'll do my best to answer them over the next coming weeks. Otherwise, I hope you all enjoy your festive period. Hope everyone's safe, well, healthy and enjoying getting out on the bike still. I'll see you all again soon.